So the final presenter this morning is Anthony Ventura from Pfizer, and I think it will be very interesting to hear about regulatory convergence from an industry perspective. And this is something that you have to deal with on a daily basis. So Anthony, if you could come and introduce yourself.
Thanks for the opportunity to present today. I'm really looking forward to it. My objective is to give you some substrate for an interesting dialogue, and I head up the Latin America region for Pfizer. First, disclaimer from my standpoint, this is my personal opinion. I've been leading the Latin America region for Pfizer for 13 years, and previous to that it was Warner Lambert for another 8. So I've been very familiar with the region, and I've seen the trends come and go, and so I'm giving you my personal opinion. So look at me as a consultant, and is more than you know, a Pfizer employee, because I think it's time to really look at how we're doing these things. And we've been talking about harmonization for quite a while, and that's not me typing, by the way. But I just wanted to point out that you know, for me, this is something that I really strive for, and I appreciate and look forward to the opportunity for dialogue. But the key thing for us from an industry standpoint, we have to make sure we have 2 key things identified as our primary objective in the industry, and it's access of medicines to patient and compliance. That has to be the landscape that really a lot of our discussion, you know, with the agencies or trade associations or whatever, for that matter, is based upon. And before I go, I wanted to say what do we call that? My fun fact. During college, I worked as a bodyguard for rock bands that used to come to the Detroit area. So I would be with them for 2 or 3 days, and that's how I made some extra money doing that. So I was a bodyguard for 6 years, working with various bands. No bands from Latin America though, but a lot of rock bands, and I think I lost a little hearing doing that work. But that was very interesting, and I have some fun stories about some bands you may have heard of. But I really want to give you an industry perspective. The things, as Mike says, that we deal day to day, or I deal day to day. And, you know, we walk a fine line between the project teams that are managing the asset, the new product or approved product, and the local regulatory teams and the local business. So we're constantly educating. I call ourselves regulatory, we're educators from both sides, and it's something that you have to excel on to succeed. So really from the internal regulatory driver perspective, we deal a lot with the project team and versus country regulatory realities. We get a lot of you know, comments like, well, this wasn't required in this country, it's required in this country, why this is not scientifically justified. Should we provide this data when we originally submit this, the new application, or should we deal with the queries down the road? So there's a lot of dialogue that we have to do. A lot of times with the industry, you know, especially large pharma, you have a lot of it is driven by the U.S. and European regulatory environment, and but the emerging markets is really taking a big role now in our dialogue, and it's something that you know, we're really investing in, obviously, and I think a lot of large pharma is investing in. We have to work or understand the global strategy versus the local strategy. They're very different. You know, everyone knows country by country, even in the region, the dynamics of the pharmaceutical industry, the medicine practice is very different country by country. And you can imagine when it comes to the global strategy. Resources now are becoming a big issue for us. And as a gentleman from WHO was saying, it's a fact that you know, resources, and do we provide the extra documents? Do we make that extra effort, and or do we try to you know, access is key, but what's the way to address this opportunity if it's a non-ICH requirement? Do we actually do the data? Do we create the data? And also, I find that you know, working with the teams and you know, some of my colleagues that work with the trade associations, when you want to address an issue, do you do it on a project-by-project basis? Do you want to try to negotiate something with the agency and say, we really don't need to provide this because of this scientific fact? Or, you know, and we find sometimes the reviewer doesn't like to have that type of dialogue sometimes because of their level of expertise, or the fact that basically their marching orders is to follow strictly the guidelines. So that's something we have to discuss. Or do you work with the local trade associations, which I think obviously is the best way to do it. But you know, you have to pick your opportunities. And again, I want the disclaimer, this is my personal, you know, from my experience, opinion, okay? So one thing I wanted to say, and I didn't give this much thought, but Larry was talking about some of the questions and queries and about the 3 ways to get approvals. And one question I always asked, for products approved by the US and Europe, that the company, the owner of the product is based in the respective countries, how many products have actually been rejected and not allowed on the market? And how long has it taken before first approval in the US and Europe has the product been approved in the other market? I mean, that could be I don't know if there's a message there, but it's approved anyway, even with, you know, like I said, I'm just giving some substrate for discussion, but if every product, or 95% of the products is approved, that are approved in the US and Europe, what does that mean? You know, and you know, should we just do, it gets approved anyway, and I'm not trying to be sarcastic or anything, but it's a point of discussion. You know, if it gets approved anyway, for us, we make one product. You know, it's a global product. It's not different than, you know, in Guatemala or in the U.S. for new products when they're launched. So it's just something that you know, I always thought could be a good discussion. Industry external regulatory drivers. As you've seen, I think some of the presenter, increase in regulation, diversity of national and regional requirements. From a regulatory profession standpoint, I can honestly say, with all my years' experience, the last 5 years, it's just been, the role of regulatory has been critical in our business. And the business is understanding that. We've gone from a fairly operational role, I'm talking 10, 15 years ago, to a strategic role. And they're realizing this, that the requirements are becoming more demanding, less harmonized in some instance. Approval timelines are becoming longer, but they're not that bad compared to the global, the US or European, when you look at it side by side. But you know, it's really interesting to see the regulatory need to be strategic and to be a leader for the business is really, really something that I've seen has changed quite a bit in the last few years. Increasing agency collaboration. FDA is asking about the status in many of the Latin American countries. I know that for sure. Increasing need for 100% compliance and intolerance of non-compliance. Absolutely. Increasing scrutiny on standards. Agency resources, political and economic climates, maybe not optimal, and local issues, increasing need for global response. And you know, it's a global business, globalization, and really, the reason why I'm talking about these drivers is what is their role in the convergence objective? You know, to succeed in executing what we want, do these have an impact? And should our path forward, you know, really look at this so we go down the right path and our roadmap is correct. Recent accounts of regulatory convergence in the region. We've seen mutual recognition of GMP, ICH quality standards, and pharmacovigilance. True harmonization is viewed as a long-term goal by industry experts. I kind of challenge that right now. I agree with the convergence, obviously, concept. Meaningful regulatory change has been hard to realize. PANDRA, this was a great, and still is, obviously a great initiative. You've seen commitment of regulators in academia and industry, but the hard fact is we really haven't had recommendations have been rarely approved by the agencies. So the key part of this presentation is why. Why is that? And it could be obvious for some, but I think I really believe that the understanding the why is a key component of the regulatory convergence strategy and success, because we need to look at the hard facts, as the gentleman from Pavo said. The training. What you're investing so much in training, but if the government changes, or the agency you change, and the leaders of the agency, how does that help us? But it's a hard fact, and we need to understand that it's not right or wrong. It's just something we need to realize and address. So, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, my personal opinion, the summary of the terrain in Latin America, it's a growing middle class, stable macroeconomic conditions. There's been a rebound in GDP in many markets since the 2009 economic crisis. Obviously, we have some exceptions, volatility and inflation in some of the markets, and you're all familiar with those. The retail market is dominated by branded products. There's strong national and regional companies. They're growing. R&D companies are losing market share. Not good or bad, it's just a matter of fact. In the last 5 years, generic companies have taken 24% of the market share in the region, and large multinational companies have lost 15% in that same time. Institutional market is increasingly important. Governments increase spending on healthcare, and pricing pressures increase at the same time. I think these are some critical factors which make the landscape that we have to work with. Sorry if this is unclear, but this is an example. We might have more, because this is like a 6-month-old slide. There's 17 new administrations in 4 years in the region. And that, I think, really has a big impact for what we're trying to achieve. We've had some, these are some examples of organizations participating in harmonization efforts. I'm sure you're all very familiar with them. But I think this is, as you've seen from APEC, of course, this is a strong pathway to success in terms of convergence. So, from the industry standpoint, I gave you some internal and external comments and, like I said, information for you to think about and help with the dialogue. Now I want to give you what I believe is somewhat of a success story when it comes to regulatory convergence, and I want to thank Tarsila Ray, who's my head of regulatory here in Mexico, and she's the technical vice president of AMIF here, and she's helped me quite a bit with these slides, but I agree that some of these are a good sign of things moving in the trend, moving in a positive direction. Equivalence agreement extended to drugs. A consultation should be published soon, I understand. Expedites access to safe and effective drugs. U.S., Canada, and EMA and Switzerland are part of this agreement. Considered obviously a large number of devices and drugs sold in Mexico are also authorized in the U.S. and Canada. Safety standards of these countries are recognized to be equivalent to those of the general law of Mexico. I think that's something we always want to hear. That's for every market. That's our goal. Corporate Peace will recognize authorization in these countries as sufficient proof of safety and efficacy. This is a huge step. Huge step. So that's one point. Corporate Peace has been certified by PAHO as a reference authority class 4 for vaccines and drugs, as we've seen. Innovative initiative for products developmental by established company in partnership with Cultural Police. We'll have an expedited approval. That's something that's being worked on right now. New third-party process for evaluating dossiers prior to Cultural Police review. This was very interesting, I have to say, for us at the company, because basically you're hiring a third party to do your review, and basically they work with Cultural Police, or Cultural Police works with them. Cultural Police is ultimately responsible to ensure that the review is done properly before it grants market authorization. This was to address the high workload, but it was innovative, and it was done in partnership with the trade association, so that was a success. Generics initiative to strengthen and accelerate approval process may be extended to innovative new products. Article 170, by which we can register with clinical trials performance without a CPP, will be signed and published in the near future. Ongoing evaluation of requirements to change API manufacturing. This is for the multinational countries. Supply chain is a critical part of the business strategy and access of the medicine and to the patients, and the requirements sometimes can be pretty demanding when it comes to multi-sources, so we're looking at that. Also, I want to touch base on Brazil. Brazil and Argentina, two major members of APEC, are working towards increasing collaboration between health authorities and alignment of GMP inspection practices. In July 2010, Brazil officially applied, and once approved, the goal, of course, is regulatory inspections of ANVs that could potentially be eliminated. In September 2010, Anvisa and the US FDA signed a memorandum of understanding for the exchange of confidential technical information to increase knowledge and best practices between the agencies. This is a very big step. It's not clear if any of the agreements with Anvisa and other organizations will lead to mutual recognition of GMP, inspections, certifications, or product administrations. In August 2011, Anvisa and USP signed an agreement to qualify Brazil to develop quality standards for the Brazilian pharmacopoeia. Efforts to standardize and ensure the quality of the drug products as part of going. Anvisa accepts the latest edition of the pharmacopoeia from the US, Japan, EU, UK, Germany, France, Mexico, Portugal, and Argentina, as well as international pharmacopoeia and the Brazilian pharmacopoeia. Stability requirements incorporate some aspects of ICH, but there's still some specific Brazilian requirements. Same with biosimilars in terms of incorporating some aspects of the World Health Organization guidelines with specific Brazilian requirements, and GMP requirements in alignment with the World Health Organization Technical Report Series 908. So those are the updates from I picked two of the top markets. So in summary, really, you've seen some successes here, and I think it's important to see why. That helps us understand, like I said, the roadmap forward. I think it's very important we have a common goal in our discussion with what we want to achieve: access to medicine, compliance, and really, all we have is science, really, when it comes to in some of our discussion in terms of requirements, which shows the safety, the quality, and efficacy of the product. So obviously our dialogue is scientific based. Does that require training? Does that, what do we do to get there? And also, we have to have a win-win situation. I think the political and social pressures of all the markets, I don't care if it's Guatemala or if it's the U.S. and Europe, they drive a lot of the policy. And we have to make it a win-win situation in the region. And I think transfer is a perfect example of that, which is, I know occurs in many markets, in Brazil and Argentina, where there's a sharing of knowledge, sharing of the asset, and really that's one path forward in terms of introducing a product where everyone wins in that scenario. And of course, the win-win formula has to have patient health and safety first. So Again, just want to give you a quick industry perspective, and I look forward to the dialogue. Questions?